I always thought our family was normal. Maybe a little loud, maybe a little stubborn, but normal. Every Thanksgiving, we'd gather at my parents' old house on the edge of town, the one with the creaky porch and the maple tree that dropped leaves like confetti. My mom would start cooking at dawn, humming along to her favorite Motown records. And by noon, the house would smell like cinnamon, sage, and roasting turkey. My dad would be in the living room, pretending to watch football, but really just napping with the dog. My younger sister, Emily, would be glued to her phone, texting her friends about how cringe our family was. And me, I'd be in the kitchen, peeling potatoes, sneaking bites of stuffing, and trying to keep the peace. Before I tell you how my family's Thanksgiving turned into a nightmare, take a second to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments, what's the coldest holiday you've ever experienced? And was it the weather or the people that made it that way? Last year, everything changed. It started with a phone call the night before Thanksgiving. My mom's voice was tight, almost brittle. Your Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda's here, and they're bringing Tyler. Tyler, the cousin I hadn't seen 5 years, not since he'd stormed out of a family reunion after a screaming match with my dad. The cousin who'd always been a little too quick to anger, a little too eager to find fault. I felt a knot form in my stomach, but I tried to sound cheerful. That's great, Mom. The more the merrier, right? She didn't answer right away. Just try to be patient with him, for my sake. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying old arguments in my head, the way Tyler used to bait my dad, the way Aunt Linda would always take his side, no matter what. I told myself it would. Be fine. We're older now. Maybe everyone had mellowed out. Maybe this year will be different. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to my parents' house. The sky was gray, the air sharp with the promise of snow. I parked behind my dad's truck and sat in the car for a minute, watching my breath fog up the windshield. I could see the kitchen light glowing through the window, my mom's silhouette moving back and forth. I took a deep breath and went inside. The house was warm, almost too warm, and filled with the familiar chaos of Thanksgiving morning. My mom was basting the turkey, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, flour dusting her cheeks. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes looked tired. You're early, she said, handing me a bowl of green beans to trim. I could use the help. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, grateful for the distraction. By noon, the house was full. My sister arrived with her new boyfriend, a quiet guy named Mark, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My dad was in rare form, cracking jokes and pouring everyone a little too much wine. The doorbell rang and my heart skipped a beat. Uncle Ray, Aunt Linda, and Tyler stood on the porch, bundled up against the cold. Tyler was taller than I remembered, his hair longer, his eyes harder. He barely looked at me as he brushed past, muttering something under his breath. The tension was immediate, like a storm cloud settling over the house. Tyler refused to help in the kitchen, instead slumping on the couch and scrolling through his phone. Aunt Linda hovered around my mom, offering helpful suggestions that sounded more like criticisms. Uncle Ray started in on my dad about politics, and within minutes they were arguing, voices rising above the clatter of pots and pans. I tried to keep things light, making small talk with Mark and Emily, but the mood was sour. Every joke fell flat. Every attempt at conversation turned into a debate. My mom's hand shook as she carved the turkey, and I could see her blinking back tears. I wanted to say something to tell everyone to just stop, but I didn't know. How we finally sat down to eat, the table groaning under the weight of food. My dad tried to say grace, but Tyler interrupted, snorting and rolling his eyes. Can we just eat already? He snapped. Aunt Linda shot him a warning look, but said nothing. My mom's face crumpled for a second, then she forced a smile and passed the mashed potatoes. The meal was a disaster. Tyler complained about the food, picking at his plate and making loud, sarcastic comments. Uncle Ray and my dad kept sniping at each other, their voices getting louder with every glass of wine. Emily and Mark whispered to each other, clearly planning their escape. I felt like I was watching my family fall apart in slow motion, powerless to stop it. By the time dessert was served, the air was thick with resentment. My mom excused herself, saying she needed some air. I followed her outside, wrapping my arms around her as she cried on the porch. I just wanted one nice holiday, she whispered. Just one. I nodded, holding my mom as the cold air bit through my sweater. The world outside was silent, the first flakes of snow drifting down, softening the edges of the yard. Inside, I could still hear the muffled sounds of arguing, the clink of dishes, the scrape of chairs. I wanted to tell her it would be okay. That families fight and holidays are always stressful, but the words felt empty. This wasn't just a bad day. It was something deeper, something broken. After a few minutes, my mom wiped her eyes and straightened up. I should go back in, she said, forcing a smile. They'll wonder where I am. I squeezed her hand. Take your time. I'll handle things. She nodded, grateful, and I watched her disappear into the kitchen. Her shoulders hunched. I lingered on the porch, letting the cold clear my head. I thought about all the Thanksgivings we'd had before and how even when things got tense, there was always laughter, always a sense that we were in it together. This year felt different. The cracks in our family weren't just showing. They were widening, threatening to swallow us whole. When I finally went back inside, the living room was empty except for Tyler, who was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up as I sat down across from him. For a moment, I just watched him, trying to see the cousin I used to know. The kid who'd taught me how to ride a bike, who'd shared secrets in comic books and dreams of running away to California. But all I saw was anger, coiled tight and ready to strike. Rough day, huh? I said, trying to keep my tone light. Tyler snorted. You could say that. He didn't look at me, but I could see his jaw clench. I don't know why I even came. This family's a joke. I felt a flash of irritation, but I swallowed it. You didn't have to come, I said quietly. No one forced you. He finally looked at me, his eyes hard. Yeah, well, Mom guilt-tripped me. Said Grandma would have wanted us all together. He shook his head, like that means anything. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was being unfair, but I could see something else in his eyes, something like hurt, or maybe regret. You know, it doesn't have to be like this, I said. We could try, at least, for Mom's sake. Tyler laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Try what? Pretend we're some happy family? That ship sailed a long time ago. Before I could answer, Aunt Linda appeared in the doorway, her face pinched. Tyler, can you help me with the dishes? He rolled his eyes but got up, muttering under his breath. I watched them go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I wanted to fix things, but I didn't know where to start. In the kitchen. My dad and Uncle Ray were still arguing, their voices low but intense. Emily and Mark had disappeared, probably hiding out in her old bedroom. My mom was washing dishes, her movements mechanical. I offered to help, but she shook her head. Go relax, she said, her voice flat. I've got this. I wandered back to the living room, feeling like a ghost in my own house. The TV was on, but the sound was muted. I sat down and stared at the flickering images, my mind racing. Was this how families ended? Not with a bang, but with 1,000 small cuts, resentments, grudges, words left unsaid. After a while, Emily came downstairs, her face pale. We're going to head out, she said, not meeting my eyes. Mark's got work early. I nodded, not bothering to argue. Drive safe. She hesitated, then hugged me, quick and tight. Sorry about today, she whispered. It's not your fault, I said, but I wasn't sure I believed it. As the evening wore on, the house emptied out. Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda left in a huff, Tyler trailing behind them, his shoulders hunched against the cold. My dad retreated to the garage, claiming he needed to check on something. My mom finished cleaning the kitchen, then disappeared into her bedroom. I was alone, surrounded by the wreckage of what was supposed to be a celebration. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, half-eaten pies on the counter, the smell of burnt gravy lingering in the air. I sat at the table, staring at the empty chairs, and wondered how we'd gotten here. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I thought about Tyler, about the anger in his eyes, the way he'd lashed out at everyone. I thought about my mom, her quiet tears on the porch. I thought about all the things we'd left unsaid, all the ways we'd failed each other. I promised myself that next year would be different, that I'd find a way to bring us back together. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed forever. The next morning, the house felt hollow, as if the arguments and tension had sucked all the warmth from the walls. I woke to the sound of my mom moving quietly in the kitchen, her footsteps soft, almost apologetic. The smell of coffee drifted down the hallway, but it didn't have the same comforting effect as usual. I lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day before. Every word, every glare, every slammed door echoed in my mind. Eventually, I got up and padded into the kitchen. My mom was sitting at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug, staring out the window at the gray morning. She looked up when I entered, managing a small smile. "Morning," she said, her voice hoarse. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had seen too much, who didn't need words to understand each other. "You sleep?" I asked finally. She shook her head. "Not really." "You?" I shrugged. "Same." We sat there, sipping our coffee, watching the snowfall. It was peaceful, in a way, but I could feel the weight of everything that had happened pressing down us. After a while, my dad came in, rubbing his eyes. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn. He poured himself some coffee and sat down, glancing between me and my mom. "Well," he said, trying to sound cheerful, "that was a Thanksgiving to remember." My mom didn't laugh. She just stared at her mug, her fingers tracing the rim. I wanted to say something, to break the tension, but I didn't know where to start. Instead, I asked, "Do you think we'll ever have a normal holiday again?" My dad sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I don't know. Maybe this is just how families are. Messy, complicated." My mom looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I just wanted everyone to be happy. Is that too much to ask?" I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's not your fault, Mom. You did everything you could." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes I wonder if that's true. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I helped my mom clean up the last of the dishes, packing leftovers into containers, scraping burnt bits from pans. My dad disappeared into the garage again, tinkering with his old radio, pretending not to hear the quiet in the house. Emily texted to say she'd made it home safely, but she didn't mention anything about the fight or about coming back for Christmas. I spent the afternoon walking through the neighborhood, the snow crunching under my boots. The houses were all decorated for the holidays, lights twinkling in the windows, wreaths on the doors. I wondered what was happening inside those houses. Were other families fighting too? Or were they laughing, playing games, sharing stories? Around the table, I felt like an outsider, peering in at a world I no longer belonged to. When I got back, my mom was sitting in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. She patted the seat next to her, and I sat down. We looked at pictures of past Thanksgivings, Emily and me in matching sweaters. My dad carving the turkey, Tyler grinning with a mouthful of mashed potatoes. The images felt like relics from another life. A life where things were simpler, where love was enough to hold us together. "Do you remember this one?" My mom asked, pointing to a photo of me and Tyler building a snowman in the front yard. I nodded, smiling despite myself. "We fought over the carrot nose. He wanted to use a stick." She laughed, a real laugh this time, and for a moment, the heaviness lifted, but then her face grew serious. "What happened to us?" she whispered. "When did we stop being a family?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was gradual, 1,000 little hurts, 1,000,000 tiny disappointments. Or maybe it was inevitable, the way people grow apart. The way old wounds fester when left untreated. That night, As I lay in bed, I thought about reaching out to Tyler. Maybe if I called him, we could talk things through. Maybe we could start to heal. But I was afraid he'd hang up, or worse, that he'd say things I wasn't ready to hear. So I did nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. The days passed, and the house slowly returned to normal. My mom started baking again, filling the kitchen with the smell of cinnamon and sugar. My dad fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, grumbling about the cost of new washers. Emily called once or twice, her voice distant, distracted. But something had shifted. The easy laughter, the sense of belonging, was gone. A week after Thanksgiving, I found myself replaying the holiday over and over, searching for the moment when things had truly gone wrong. Was it when Tyler walked in the door, his face already set in a scowl? Or was it years before, when old grudges first took root and we all pretended not to notice? The questions circled in my mind as I went about my days, each one heavier than the last. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler, just 2 words, "You home?" My heart skipped. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the silence stand. But another part that remembered snowball fights and late-night talks couldn't let go. I typed back, "Yeah, want to talk?" He replied almost instantly, "Be there at 10. I spent those 10 minutes pacing the living room, straightening cushions, wiping invisible smudges from the coffee table. When the doorbell finally rang, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Tyler stood on the porch, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, eyes darting everywhere but at me. He looked tired, older than his 24 years. "Hey," I said, stepping aside to let him in. He nodded, brushing past me, and dropped onto the couch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, but not hostile. Just uncertain. Finally, Tyler broke it. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low. "For Thanksgiving, for everything." I sat across from him, unsure what to say. "You don't have to." He cut me off. "No, I do. I was a jerk. I know I was. I don't know how to be around everyone anymore. Feels like I'm always on the outside, looking in." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. "It's not just you, Ty. We're all struggling. I think we've all been pretending things are fine. For so long, we forgot how to actually talk to each other." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second I saw the cousin I used to know. "I miss how things used to be," he said quietly. "Before all the fights. Before Dad left. Before Mom started drinking." The words hung in the air, raw and painful. I hadn't realized how much he'd been carrying, how much we'd all ignored. "I miss it too," I said. "But maybe we can start over. Just you and me at least." Tyler gave a small, sad smile. "Yeah, I'd like that." We talked for hours about everything and nothing. About our parents, about growing up, about the things we wished we'd said. Tyler admitted he'd been angry for a long time. Angry. At his dad for leaving, at his mom for checking out, at the rest of us for pretending not to notice. I told him about my own fears, about feeling responsible for holding the family together, about the guilt that gnawed at me every time things fell apart. By the time he left, something had shifted between us. The old wounds were still there, but they didn't feel quite so raw. We weren't fixed, not by a long shot, but we'd taken a step. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt a flicker of hope. The next day, I called my mom and told her about Tyler's visit. She listened quietly, then let out a shaky breath. "I'm glad you talked," she said. "Maybe it's not too late for the rest of us." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that families could heal, that old hurts could be forgiven. But I knew it would take more than one conversation, more than one apology. Over the next few weeks, I made an effort to reach out to Emily, to my dad, even to Aunt Linda. Some calls went unanswered, some ended in awkward silences, but a few led to real conversations. Slowly, painfully, we started to talk about what had happened, about what we wanted for the future. Christmas came and went, quieter than usual, but not as tense. There were still arguments, still moments when the old resentments flared up, but there were also moments of laughter, of connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I realized then that families aren't defined by the good times, but by how they survive the bad. By the willingness to keep trying, even when it hurts. By the hope that one day, things might be better. Spring arrived slowly that year, as if the world itself was hesitant to move forward. The snow melted in patches, revealing muddy lawns and forgotten holiday decorations. My mom started planting flowers in the front yard, her hands deep in the earth, her face turned toward the sun. I watched her from the window sometimes, wondering if she was really healing or just trying to bury her pain beneath layers of soil and seeds. Tyler and I kept in touch, meeting for coffee every couple of weeks. Our conversations grew easier, less burdened by the past. Sometimes we talked about our families, sometimes about work or movies or the latest disaster in the news. There were still moments when the old tension crept in a sharp word, a defensive glance, but we were learning to let those moments pass without letting them define us. One afternoon, as we sat in a crowded cafe, Tyler surprised me. "I've been thinking about moving back," he said, stirring his coffee. "Not with Mom, but maybe get a place nearby. Try to start over." I looked at him, searching for any sign of doubt. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yeah, I think I need to. For myself, for all of us, maybe." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in months. "I think that's a good idea, Ty. I really do." He grinned, a real, unguarded smile. And for a moment I saw the cousin I'd missed for so long. Back at home, my mom was making plans for Easter. She wanted to host a small dinner, just immediate family. "No drama this time," she said, half joking, half pleading. I promised her I'd help, that I'd do whatever I could to keep the peace. She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with hope and fear. The day of the dinner, the house was filled with the smell of roasting ham and fresh bread. Emily arrived first, alone this time, her arms full of flowers. She hugged my mom tightly, whispering something I couldn't hear. My dad came in next, carrying a pie from the bakery down the street. He looked nervous, glancing around as if expecting an argument to break out at any moment. Tyler showed up last, a little late, a little anxious. He brought a bottle of wine and a tentative smile. My mom hugged him, holding on a little longer than necessary. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered. Tyler nodded, his eyes shining. Dinner was awkward at first, everyone tiptoeing around. The past, careful not to say the wrong thing. But as the meal went on, the tension eased. Emily told a story about her new job, making us all laugh. My dad shared a memory from his childhood, his voice softening as he spoke. Tyler and I exchanged glances, silently agreeing to let the moment be what it was, imperfect. But real. After dinner, we sat in the living room, sipping coffee and watching the sunset. My mom brought out the old photo albums, and we flipped through them together, pointing out bad haircuts and embarrassing outfits. There was a sense of nostalgia, but also a feeling that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the pieces of what we'd lost. As the evening wound down, Tyler pulled me aside. "Thanks for not giving up on me," he said quietly. "I know I made things hard." I shook my head. "We all did, Ty. But we're here now. That's what matters." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I believed we might actually be okay. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how close we'd come to losing each other. How easy it would have been to let anger and pride keep us apart. But we'd chosen something different. We'd chosen to try, to forgive, to hope. Families are messy. They break and bend and sometimes shatter. But if you're lucky, if you're willing to do the hard work, they can also heal. They can become something stronger, something more honest. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. The nightmare of that Thanksgiving still haunted me, but it no longer defined me. It was just one chapter in a much larger story that, for the first time in a long time, felt worth telling. Summer brought a new rhythm to our lives. The days grew longer, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and barbecue smoke. My mom's garden flourished, a riot of color and life that seemed to spill over into the rest of the house. She started inviting neighbors over for lemonade on the porch, her laughter ringing out like wind chimes. It was as if she decided to reclaim joy, one small act at a time. Tyler found a small apartment a few blocks away. It wasn't much, just a studio with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was his. He started working at the local hardware store, saving up for something better. Sometimes, after his shift, he'd come by for dinner, bringing stories about eccentric customers and the oddball crew he worked with. My mom always set an extra place for him, and my dad would grumble about the noise, but never missed a meal. Emily visited more often, too. She and Tyler started to rebuild their own relationship, sharing inside jokes and old memories. There were still moments of awkwardness, still shadows from the past, but the laughter came easier now. We spent long evenings on the porch, watching fireflies blink in the darkness, talking about everything and nothing. One night, as we sat outside, Tyler turned to me. "Do you ever think about that Thanksgiving?" he asked, his voice quiet. I nodded. All the time. He was silent for a moment, then said, "I used to think it ruined everything. But now, I don't know. Maybe it was what we needed? To finally see each other, to stop pretending." I thought about that for a while. He was right. The nightmare of that day had forced us to confront the things we'd been avoiding for years. It had hurt more than I could have imagined, but it had also opened the door to something better. As the summer wore on, we started new traditions. Sunday dinners on the porch, game nights with too much popcorn, impromptu trips to the lake. My mom taught Emily how to make her famous peach cobbler, and Tyler and I tried and failed to fix the old swing set in the backyard. My dad even joined in teaching us how to grill the perfect burger. His gruff exterior softening with every shared meal. There were setbacks, of course. Old arguments resurfaced, tempers flared, and sometimes the weight of the past felt too heavy to bear. But we kept showing up, kept trying. We learned to apologize, to forgive, to let go of things that no longer served us. One afternoon, as we sat around the table, my mom raised her glass. "To family," she said, her voice steady. "Not the one we wish we had, but the one we have. The one we choose every day." We clink our glasses, the sound ringing out like a promise. That night, as I walked Tyler home, he stopped at the corner and looked back at the house. The windows glowed with warm light, laughter spilling out into the night. "We're lucky." "Yo," he said. "Not everyone gets a second chance." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle in my chest. Let's not waste it. As the seasons changed, so did we. The pain of that Thanksgiving never fully disappeared, but it became part of our story, a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we still had to learn. We weren't perfect, but we were together, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Autumn crept in quietly, painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson. The air turned crisp and the days grew shorter, but inside our home, there was a new kind of warmth. My mom started planning Thanksgiving weeks in advance, determined to make this year different. She called each of us, asking what dishes we wanted, what traditions we missed, what would make the day feel special. There was a gentleness in her voice, a hopefulness that hadn't been there before. Tyler offered to help with the cooking, surprising everyone, including himself. He showed up early on Thanksgiving morning, sleeves rolled up, ready to peel potatoes and chop onions. Emily arrived soon after, arms full of groceries and a playlist of our favorite songs. My dad set the table, humming under his breath, and even managed to fix the wobbly chair that had been threatening to collapse for years. As we worked together in the kitchen, the old rhythms returned. There was laughter, teasing, the clatter of pots and pans. Tyler burned the rolls, and Emily dropped a bowl of cranberries, sending red juice plattering across the floor. My mom just laughed, shaking her head, and handed them both towels. "It's not Thanksgiving until something goes wrong," she said. And for once, no one argued. When it was time to eat, we gathered around the table, the food steaming and fragrant. My mom looked at each of us, her eyes shining. "Before we start, I want to say something," she began. The room grew quiet. "Last year was hard. Maybe the hardest we've ever had. But we made it through. We're here together, and that's what matters. I am proud of us. I love you all." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Tyler raised his glass. "To second chances," he said. Emily smiled, echoing the toast. My dad nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. We clinked glasses, the sound ringing out in the quiet room. Dinner was loud and messy and perfect in its imperfection. We told stories, some old, some new. We argued about football, debated the best way to make stuffing, and laughed until our sides hurt. The shadows of the past were still there, but they felt smaller, less threatening. We had learned to live with them, to let them remind us of what we'd overcome. After dinner, we moved to the living room, plates balanced on our laps, pie in hand. My mom put on her favorite Motown record, and soon we were dancing, spinning around the room, the dog barking at our feet. Tyler pulled Emily into a clumsy waltz, and my dad tried to teach me the steps to a dance he claimed to have invented in college. We were ridiculous, and it was wonderful. Later, as the night wound down, we sat together in the glow of the fireplace. My mom dozed in her chair, Emily and Tyler played cards, and my dad read the newspaper, glasses perched on the end of his nose. I watched them all, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. We had been through so much, but we were still here. Still, a family dot as I got ready for bed. I thought about how far we'd come since that nightmare Thanksgiving. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled us. We had faced the darkness together, and in doing so, found our way back to the light. I knew there would be more hard days ahead. More arguments, more disappointments, more moments when the past threatened to pull us under. But I also knew we could survive them. We had learned the most important lesson of all. That family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The house was quiet as I lay in bed that night, the echoes of laughter and music still lingering in the air. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the heater, feeling the weight of the day settle gently over me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't dread the future. I didn't fear the next holiday, or the next argument, or the next unexpected storm. I knew we would face them together, and that was enough. As I drifted towards sleep, I thought about all the families out there, struggling through their own dark seasons, wondering if things will ever get better. I wanted to reach through the screen and tell them, don't give up. Healing is slow, and forgiveness is hard, but it's possible. Even the deepest wounds can become scars that remind us not just of pain, but of survival and of love. If you're watching this and your family feels broken, know that you're not alone. Our Thanksgiving nightmare taught us that the darkest moments can lead to the brightest mornings, if you're willing to keep trying. Hold on to hope, even when it feels impossible. Sometimes, the family you end up with is even stronger than the one you started with. Thank you for listening to our story. If it touched you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own experiences in the comments. Your story matters too. And remember, every family has a dark side, but every family can find its way back to the light.